What's going on, everyone? Another episode here of Battleline Podcast. We are just coming off of Hanukkah, looking at the calendar here for all of you who have celebrated. It's one of those years where on the Hebrew calendar, Hanukkah fell way before Christmas. Sometimes it kind of matches up a little bit better, but that means we're gearing up for Christmas, and hope you are all excited for that. We have a great episode lined up here. One thing I wanted to address, actually, before we get into everything is for the new listeners, because I feel like the loyal listeners kind of know this. We get a lot of great reviews on Apple Podcasts, but I read all the comments that we get and emails sent to battlelinepodcast@gmail.com and that kind of thing. And sometimes the newer listeners, I think, tune in and they see who the guest is and they want us to get right to who we have on, which I understand. And I think the loyal listeners, the people who've been on board a while, kind of get the format of the show. And the way I would put it, the show is kind of a hangout. We'll get into whatever's going on at the moment. We'll talk about different things in our lives, and especially people who want to hear about Chris's Battleline tactical courses and get a better idea of what they'd be signing up for if they go to them, and giving a recap of after they happen. We get into that type of thing. So, hey, you're welcome to skip through some of that and just get to the interview if that's why you're here. I understand that, but I think people really get the most out of the show when they get a chance to check out our full episodes and really hear more about what we're up to, our take on things. And then, of course, the interviews are always in depth. Interviews are always, at the very least, like an hour long. So, we don't rush through things. This is a hangout more than anything. This is the Battleline Podcast Hangout. And you're welcome to come aboard, and you're also welcome to skip through it. I'm not going to say don't listen if you do that, but this is how we kind of enjoy doing the format of things. And of course, I should say the sponsors that we have on board, we're only going to work with sponsors that we really like what they're doing and that we get great feedback from listeners on. We get a lot of emails of people who have checked out different products that of sponsors that we work with, and they all get some great feedback. So that's why we continue doing it. We're not going to put anything out there that we don't believe in. So, you're going to hear about something that you might want to check out when you listen to our full episodes. So I just wanted to throw that out there. And with that, I know a lot of people are stressed during these holiday seasons. A lot of stressors pop up around the holidays. For me, I don't think it's so much related to the holidays as during the cold weather months, I start to get, I start to actually wake up with like a soreness in my upper back. I know a lot of people get lower back, but upper back and neck, like a stiffness. And there's a few different tools in my arsenal I use to work with that. I'll do lower weight, higher rep exercises with like the lat pull downs and the rows. I'll use my foam roller. But then another thing that really has helped me is Ned CBD. Ned CBD is just great for that. Ned is a USDA certified organic product. All of Ned's full spectrum hemp oil is extracted from USDA certified organic hemp plants grown by an independent farmer named Jonathan in Peonia, Colorado. These products are science-backed, nature-based solutions that offer an alternative to prescription and over-the-counter drugs. And I want to tell you about Ned's incredible brand new product, which has been in development for over a year. That is their Distress Blend, which contains CBG. And that's known as the mother of all cannabinoids because of how effective it is at combating anxiety and stress by inhibiting the reuptake of GABA, the neurotransmitter responsible for stress regulation. So this time of year, you guys are going to love the Distress Blend. All of Ned's products have full transparency. They share third-party lab reports, who farms their products, and their extraction process, all right there on their site. Ned CBD products have over 2,000 five-star reviews. And make no mistake, they're truly science-backed with what they're doing. That's why they work with incredible partners within the medical field. Partners like Dr. Caroline Leaf, Dr. Christian Gonzalez, and Dr. Will Cole. So check them out if you haven't already, or I know a lot of you guys have been on board for a while and are reordering. So right now for the holidays, Battleline listeners get 20% off Ned products with code Battleline. When you spend more than $150, Ned is throwing in free gifts with every order. visit helloned.com/Battleline to get access. That's HELLONED.com/Battleline to get 20% off plus free gifts with orders over $150. Thank you, Ned, for sponsoring Battleline Podcast and offering our listeners a natural remedy for some of life's most common health issues. We also love Audible. I seriously love Audible. They have so many great books that are coming out right now that I need to check out. Every time I read a book and I'm finished, I get excited because I could check out something else, either reading or to listen to on Audible. Like, I want to check out that new Will Smith autobiography. There's a new book on Eddie Van Halen I want to check out. So I'm going to be on Audible quite a lot. Audible is the leading provider of spoken word entertainment all in one place. At Audible, you can find the largest selection of audiobooks ranging from bestsellers and new releases to celebrity memoirs, languages, business, motivation, and more, like original entertainment from top celebrity creators and thousands of popular and binge-worthy podcasts, all from one app. I especially would recommend that you check out Frank Bello's new book, Fathers, Brothers, and Sons. We just had Frank Bello on the podcast, and if you do the audiobook on Audible, he narrates it. Trust us, it's hard work to do a full audiobook. I've done them before. Chris Peranto has done them before. So when authors really take that step and take the time to do it themselves, it means a lot. So I'd recommend Frank Bello's new book. I'm just about done with it myself, and I like it a lot. With Audible, you can always find the perfect title for whatever you're doing, wherever you're going, or whatever you're feeling. Audible allows you to find audiobooks that will inspire, delight, help, or simply entertain you. With Audible, you can listen while working from home, cooking, exercising, on a walk, as a family activity, or just relaxing. And now with the new Plus catalog, an Audible membership is so much more valuable as it gives all members a chance to listen to and discover new favorites and new formats, like the exclusive Words Plus music series, or a podcast you've never considered before. We're on there. Check us out on there. And with the free Audible app on your smartphone or tablet, you can download titles and listen offline anytime, anywhere. Audible can help people with their own personal goals, whether they want to learn something new, get more books in their life while doing other things, focus on mind and body wellness, or simply enjoy a well-deserved diversion, which is always nice, just to listen to that audiobook and get away, as we say, from the news media and just do something that you enjoy that's going to be positive in your life. You can set your own goals and let Audible help you reach them, no matter how many books you want to get under your belt this coming year, for example. New members can always try Audible for free for 30 days, so you have nothing to lose. So join me on my Audible adventure. You will always be able to find the perfect title for you. Simply visit battlelinepodcast.com/audible. That's battlelinepodcast.com/AUDIBLE. That's our website right there. There's no promo code needed. battlelinepodcast.com/audible. With that, Chris Peranto is out this episode. He's doing speaking engagement. I know he's been kind of busy the end of this year. It's just how it's gone. But don't go anywhere. Great interview right here. So keep it locked. Let's go.
From Omaha, Nebraska to New York City, from planet Earth to extraterrestrial life in space, a podcast with no equal, engaged in unconventional warfare through your speakers and headphones. This is a show about embracing the suck, conquering your demons, and finding God in the face of adversity. Chris Tonto Peranto.
Twitch is on. Motherfucker, I'm gonna shoot you in the face.
Ian Scotto.
Ian and I have been dating for a long time.
You are now tuned into the Battleline Podcast.
The switch is on. Battleline Podcast. Really honored to have on for this episode the founder and CEO of Vet Oga, and we'll get all into that. I want to make sure I don't butcher your last name, since this is actually like our first time speaking a little bit more in depth. Justin, and how do I say your last name?
Blajueski.
I would have gotten it so wrong. So Blajueski.
Mm-hmm. That's right.
Okay. I should give the audience the backstory on even how we met, because most of the time when I have people on, it's someone Chris really goes back with, who he has history with, who he served with, or someone who I've met from my days of just doing podcasting the past, several years, number of years at this point, or someone who has a book out that they're pitching. I was going to Pittsburgh to visit my uncle, and my mom was really who ran into Justin. She saw Justin with his service dog. And I think beyond, my mom loves dogs, wanted to meet the dog. I love dogs as well. And thank you for your service and everything. And I think every vet has a story that they could really tell, but I'm not going to really get everybody on the podcast. So, most of the time it's just great to meet different vets. But when I saw what you do, I was like, this is a perfect story for the podcast. And then researching you, I came across the CNN piece and everything. So there's definitely a lot to dig into here.
Yeah, I'm glad that we bumped into each other in passing. It was pretty serendipitous, I guess you would call it.
Yeah, at the Admiral's Lounge, I guess, because my mom is like a frequent flyer. It was my first time seeing it. And it was fun. Nothing that prestigious, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Like they have cereal. It was my first time there, but they have like cereal and juice and like cucumber infused water and and people are a little bit less crazy with the mask mandates. That's I guess the one positive.
Yeah, it's a little sanctuary when you're at the airport at a minimum. So,
although it's fun. So we saw each other on what was considered like the biggest travel day, and the news media was blowing it up like, oh, it's going to be packed, and we're at JFK, which is one of the biggest airports there is, and quite honestly, pretty calm. Not a whole lot going on.
It was really calm in JFK that morning, which surprised me too.
And you were there to see your family because you're California based, right?
I'm California based, and my family's up in upstate New York. So I was visiting the East Coast for the holidays.
That's all. Did you have a good Thanksgiving?
I did, thank you. How about yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. Got to, like I said, see my uncle in Pittsburgh, who I haven't seen in a number of years, visit the Museum of Natural History, which their museum there has like the biggest collection of dinosaur bones, which was really cool. One of the guys who worked there, I don't really know what his background was, but he was like so well versed on everything, which made it really a great experience, because he was able to say like, this part of the dinosaur is a replica, these are actual bones, and this is why. Like it was cool to be able to get into that.
Is that downtown Pittsburgh? I would love to go check that out sometime.
I think so. I'm really bad with like geography, but it's definitely worth checking out. A lot of the other stuff at the museum a lot of it is replicas, like a lot of the art stuff and the artifacts, like it even says on it that this is basically like a replica of something that's in Rome or something like that. And it's a life-size replica, so it's cool to see. But with the dinosaur bones, there's something about being there and seeing like, okay, this is an actual dinosaur bone from however many thousands and thousands of years ago.
Pretty cool.
Yeah, I think the history of that is what makes it awesome. But with that, I definitely want to get into your story as a Marine, as a contractor, and leading up to what you do now and getting into yoga. So I think the best way to begin would really be your journey becoming a Marine, enlisting, and what made you enlist. And I'd love to get that backstory.
Sure. I can start from the beginning. So I grew up in upstate New York in a small town called Olean, New York, in Southwest over by Buffalo. So snow country this time of year. And come from a big family. I have 5 sisters and a brother, and pretty lower middle class growing up. And college I had partial scholarships. I played soccer, track, wrestled, things like that. And it just wasn't adding up for me. And there was something inside that was telling me I wasn't going to be going to college. And I had the opportunity, but I would have had to work for it and pay for it. And my family didn't have any money to help with that. But even when I was a junior in high school, I was looking at the Marine Corps, and actually came home. I was 17 and had a talk with my mom. I'm like, hey, listen, I have a proposal. So I laid out everything. I've been planning this, and I showed her like the financials of paying for college, the scholarships I had, all these things. And I said, this doesn't make logical sense to me. And there's also something that I would love to do and get a job guarantee to go into the Marine Corps to do avionics. And that's exactly what I did. But she was kind of silent, but because she knew I already made up my mind. And when that happens, she knows that I'll actually fall through with it no matter what. So I got to do that 1 year early enlistment when I was a junior, which gave me the inactive reserve or inactive time that you have to usually have on the end of your active duty. So I got to do that for a year, and I left when I was 18 and went to boot camp in the Marine Corps in Parris Island for a nice vacation for 13 weeks, and became Marine, and then did my avionics school down in Pensacola, worked in helicopters, and went up back to New River Air Station, which is out in North Carolina in Jacksonville. And I graduated top of my class on CH-46. Those dual prop helicopters are Chinooks in the Army, similar. They're different aircrafts, but the Marine Corps and the Navy have the smaller version. And they gave me the option to go work on the President's helicopters at HMX-1. And at the time, I was either going to be going on a 6-month float deployment where I was getting assigned already, or I was going to go back to Virginia and be assigned in Quantico. And I was like, this is a no-brainer for me. I don't want to go on a deployment right now. And went back to DC. And at the time, Clinton was in office.
Okay. Yeah, I was wondering the time period of this. So this is obviously then pre 9/11.
This is a tail end of Clinton the last year, because I went in the Marine Corps in 1998 and got there in 99. And then most of my time there was under Bush. So I was there for 9/11, and Bush was down in Florida. I was up in Virginia, and we did an emergency evac of Dick Cheney, the vice president, and took him to Camp David. And we set up a communications network there. So I had all the radios and comms going.
You're saying on 9/11, on the actual day?
On 9/11, because we do this thing where every day when you work for the president, there's an emergency response scenario that you do once a day, every day, 365 days a year. This bell goes off, everybody runs out, you have 2 minutes to get to the south lawn and land the helicopter. Cool, did it, check it off, go back. And that was never ever was it real. It was always a test. And on 9/11, we're like, something's different today. And we saw him basically carrying Dick Cheney, pulling him fast and throw him in the helicopter and go up to Camp David. And I heard every single communication for Air Force One, the president, vice president, SecDef, all those people involved. I was monitoring, making sure all the communication went through our communication system as the Marines, and then the White House communication system, WACA, and the Pentagon communications. So that was my role in 9/11. I was kind of just thrown into a fire of comms, and it's pretty interesting to see at that. I'm a young man in the middle of all this, and we didn't know what was going on. And then, so I served the rest of my time in the Marine Corps, and pretty chill, right? I didn't touch a war zone or work for the president. I'm like, I had a cush Marine job, but we're also Marines, and we're like, 9/11 happened, and then I got out in 2003, and I felt I had this itch. I'm like, I didn't get to do what Marines are supposed to do. And then a lot of veterans and or active duty at the time, or people thinking about going to the military, wanted to go catch these bad guys and these terrorists. And I figured I could do more as a contractor, and that's what I did. So I signed up with different government agencies and did communications. So I started going to Afghanistan and Iraq in mid-2000s, and I did that all the way up to 2014, and I did over 40 TDYs as a contractor, and extensively the Middle East. And my main job was I was a satellite engineer, setting up satellite communications and radios. I did a lot of training with Afghanis and Iraqis, the locals, basic stuff, computers, phones, things like that. And of course, even if I'm just a contractor, I was over in the middle of it all for all this stuff, and pretended like it didn't take its toll on me. But I had a lot of events that would happen. I had some explosions, some injuries, seen a lot of things. And in 2009, I was kind of in a dark place, suicidal. I didn't know what I was doing anymore. I was seeing the negative sides of war, and I was working with these local Afghanis and Iraqis. I was going to their weddings. I was face to face promising them, we would get them to the U.S. because they're helping us and all those things, which we, saw that what happens when we had the pullout so fast. That stuff really hit hard. But even back in 2009, I was realizing we were kind of putting this veil up with these people, and I wasn't okay with it morally. And I was questioning myself and what I was doing. And at the time, I ran and worked out to deal with my stress, right? It was my coping mechanism, but it wasn't working. I couldn't run. I had some injuries at the time, and my roommate drugged me to a yoga class. And at the end of the class, I was laying in a puddle of sweat. But the first time in over 10 years, I felt my parasympathetic nervous system, like that rest and relax. And as veteran or military, we don't realize we're trained from day one to operate in that hypervigilant, hyperarousal state. And it doesn't turn off because we're meant to operate under stress, and we're meant to thrive under stress and go towards that metaphorical gunshots, right? Like we're trained to be in this. And even when you're not doing that, it's still your level of stress is higher than most people, your baseline. And so when I went under that baseline for the first time in over a decade, I felt it. And I'm like, whatever this is medicine. I need more of it. And personally, I dove into yoga 5-6 days a week. And later that year, I did my teacher training certificate. I was going back and forth to the Middle East for 2-3 months at a time. I was teaching on the bases wherever I was in the middle of nowhere. I'd set up on the rooftops. I just teach these yoga classes, and I realized that people needed it, and they needed it from someone like me. That's one of them, because they wouldn't have went just like me back then. When I started in yoga, man, my Marine buddies gave me a lot of shit, but they all knew we're all brothers, and I was hurting. So, and full circling back now, I have a lot of them that are coming through and doing these teacher trainings with the yoga. But back then it wasn't. It was looked at as feminine or negative and nothing.
Yeah, you know what's funny is we've had and you're probably familiar with it with what you do, but we had Diamond Dallas Page in the podcast, DDP.
Oh, shit, yeah.
And yeah, I mean, do you know his whole story with yoga and all that?
Yeah.
And,
his method of yoga.
He spoke about it. I mean, he's a guy who got into wrestling later on in life. Like most of what we saw when he was in WCW, he was like in his 40s. He was not one of the younger guys. And regardless of if wrestling is choreographed, I mean, it does a ton of damage to your joints and all that. And there is that athleticism aspect of it. And he acquired all these injuries that really were weighing on him. And same thing as you, like this was the one thing he found where he's like, this is actually helping me. And when I met him, he developed, what he called, originally called it yoga for regular guys, then DDP yoga, and which he's now calling DDPY. But yeah, he said the same thing. Like this wasn't looked at as the most masculine thing, but he didn't care. He was like, this works for me. And that seems like the same thing that you felt.
Yeah. And, and I followed his journey too. And actually I was, sympathizing with him when I would hear his story, because there was only a handful of his veterans at the time in the mid 2000s that were doing yoga like that. And we were all in communication in the background. And it's funny, all of those veterans, we all own our own nonprofits now, and we all do our own thing. But we were kind of pioneers in this health and wellness with yoga and meditation and mindfulness, going out on a limb in this undiscovered territory that veterans didn't usually go to, or military. And given that, I knew, I was teaching free classes every couple of weeks or weekends. Whenever I get a chance, whatever yoga studio I was teaching at, they would let me teach a free class for military veterans and their families. And that became my mission, was to, hey, let me teach this, because I know somebody's out there ready to pull the trigger just like I was. And they need a beacon of light in their community. And I was in DC. I taught at several yoga studios, and I knew, and it, I had good 20, 40 people in some of my classes out of the blue that would come in, and they would tell me their stories, and it was very similar to mine. And there's no question, out of those hundreds of people in those first few years I taught, if I wouldn't have opened the door, there's no question that a couple of them would have committed suicide. And I had these people tell me that, and I knew I was given this gift of teaching yoga, and I had to share it. So I promised myself after my last war zone trip, I would create something to give back. And I didn't know what that was. That was December 2014 was my last trip. So I took a year off, and I gave myself, I'm a planner, so I put a 12-month schedule. I did a talk therapy once a month with a therapist. I did my vision boards. I talked to my friends, my family. I journaled, and I kind of whittled down within a few months of what Vetoga would be. And in 2015, I incorporated and got my 501c3 nonprofit status within a couple weeks of applying. And I was like, and I put a website up, and I was like, shit, we're off to the races, whether I like it or not. And I created that, and that's where Vetoga started. And after that, I was like, okay, in a year or two, I'm going to make some money or raise money and do a teacher training, because at the time I would teach. I was also a high-level teacher where I could help people write teacher trainings. I could create a teacher training to make people yoga instructors for other studios. And I was like, why don't I just create my own yoga school? I have the skills. I have these amazing instructors that are friends of mine that will come teach. And so I said, screw it. And I got a grant from Lululemon at the time. I was a yoga ambassador for Lululemon. And they gave me a substantial grant that was enough money to pay for me to do a teacher training for 20 veterans. And we did our first training. Awesome. Yeah.
So would you say that they're like a solid company like that? Because there are a lot of companies, right, that'll kind of grab the veteran cause as just posturing. And then there's other companies that really do want to help veterans. And I mean, that sounds like it to me if they were putting their money towards that.
Yeah, I'll speak real quick to Lululemon is an amazing organization. They've had different changes in leadership. They've had their own drama and things, but at their root, and when I first connected with them at a local level, they had these smaller grants for ambassadors to apply for if you were doing something in the community in a nonprofit realm. And the company gave them a small budget. It was like $100,000. And they got to choose several nonprofits to give that money to. And we were one of those nonprofits. It was about $25,000, which that was enough to do a teacher training. And there was three of us, two other people that had nonprofits. So three of us got these grants. And after we were awarded the grant and we used it, they asked us to fly out to their headquarters in Vancouver. And we flew out there, and they put us up like 5-star. They rented out Whistler Resort, the entire resort, for us.
Oh, cool.
And there was 100 people they invited for, just to highlight these ambassadors. But the three of us that were the nonprofit ambassadors that received these grants, they asked us to speak to their headquarters. So we spoke to everybody at the mothership and went up on stage, and the CEO at the time said, hey, tell your story. So they showed my video. This is what we did with the money. These are the people that are affected, blah, blah, blah. And he came over and he said, we are going to put $60 million over the next 10 years into this program. That was a $100,000 program before. And it was called the Here to Be program, which started because we showed the impact that money had for their company and visibility. And that program they have now is called Here to Be, and they give millions of dollars to all these people around the world that are doing good. And some years they focus more on veterans, some years they focus more like on diversity and things like that. So you can see, corporations are corporations where they want to focus on a group or highlight them, but they're not exploiting them like I've seen, and not negative to wounded warriors or anything. But if they get a veteran that's an amputee and they do this, then they will make them a poster boy and put them up there and ask you to give money. That's not what they're doing. Like, they actually care and give. And So just wanted to say that real quick about them.
No, it's important to say, because I think a lot of people, especially in this day and age, like, yeah, if we're spending money on a certain company, we want to know that. I think it's a good thing to see that they're doing the right thing. Just like a lot of the sponsors we have on board, really, like a lot of our sponsors, whether it's Ned or Bub's Naturals, they do things for veterans. So, Well, since I am talking sponsors here, no better time to talk about some of the great sponsors that keep us going and also do some great work with vets in terms of Photonis Defense, for example. They have guys working there who are vets like Phil Otto, who really test out the products and make sure that they're putting out just quality stuff, which they are. I mean, if your New Year's resolution is to really up your game with your firearms, to really get better with what you're doing with your weapon, you're going to need some night vision, and Photonis Defense is the global leader in that field. Their night vision solutions provide more high-quality night vision capabilities than anyone. Hunters, shooters, boaters, and outdoor enthusiasts rely on Photonis Defense systems to make their adventures safer and more successful. Military, law enforcement, and public safety end users utilize Photonis Defense solutions to give them the edge at night in tactical situations and rescue operations. Photonis Defense is now offering state-of-the-art night vision systems, from the PD Pro B 16mm binocular and the PD Pro M 16mm monocular to the PD Pro Q panoramic night vision system. Customers from all over are excited about these new, smaller, and lighter, much lighter NVGs. You've got to see these things to really experience how much smaller and lighter they are than anything you have used previously. Visit PhotonisDefense.com for more information, or look for Photonis Defense product options from your night vision dealer. I'm excited for SHOT Show. We are about a little over a month away from SHOT Show, and I think the staff there is really going to blow some people away in the firearms industry when they get to demonstrate just what they have there on the floor and show people, just when they look at it and see how light it is, man, just great stuff from those guys. So visit them, PhotonisDefense.com, PhotonisDefense.com. If you've been looking for night vision, if this is a Christmas gift for the firearms enthusiast in your life, you cannot go wrong. Not just Chris Peranto, but many guys in the special operations community are using Photonis Defense. And of course, there's only one brand of ammunition we use, Fort Scott Munitions. Fort Scott is a manufacturer of multi-federal patented solid copper and brass CNC spun ammo that is designed to tumble upon impact in soft tissue, leaving devastating wound channels for faster bleed out and quicker incapacitation. Go to their Instagram, and you're going to see some of the hunters and some of what they've used it on. I mean, this stuff is powerful, okay? This ammunition was originally developed to innovate and improve on the standard of military-grade ammunition design. It was found that not only did the TUI ammunition outperform competitors in the self-defense industry, but it quickly became apparent that it would be a top contender for hunters alike. With the ammunition being CNC spun, the tolerances are some of the tightest on the market, ensuring that you receive the same results with each pull of the trigger. Fort Scott Munitions is available throughout privately owned businesses in all 50 states, as well as every now and again you will see some stuff on their web store, but you guys know it already. Ammo is just low everywhere, low stock, so they can't keep it on the shelves for their online store. But if you go there, if you sign up for their email list, every now and again they'll have some deals on bulk ammo. And when you use our promo code, you'll be able to get like an awesome deal on it. I'm talking like saving over $100, somewhere between $100 and $200 sometimes on that bulk ammo. So go to FortScottMunitions.com, use the exclusive promo code Battleline for 15% off your order. Also on their merch is great. You'll want to check out the designs on there, and that's only available to listeners of the Battleline podcast. As I said, go to their Instagram as well. Simple enough, Fort Scott Munitions on Instagram. And they really post some awesome stuff, especially if you're a hunter. You'll like what they put up there. So as always, FortScottMunitions.com. Link is right there in the description. Fort Scott Munitions is a proud supporter of Chris Peranto, Battleline Tactical, and the Battleline Podcast. FortScottMunitions.com. Go there now. And now, back to the show.
Yeah, you're right. It is important to highlight them when we have a voice in an audience that might not know, especially like most people think Lululemon, oh, it's women's stretchy pants, but I have a whole I have a closet full of, I have 20, all the shorts I wear are Lululemon. I have their pants they're like dress pants. They're called ABC pants. And it literally stands for anti-ball crushing, because they design these stretchy pants for men. And instead of wearing khakis or slacks, I wear these pants. And my polos I wear are Lululemon that I wear to work. And so they do have a huge men's line that is functional. And a lot of people might not know that, but hearing us talk about it as men, as veterans, they're like, oh, well, shit, maybe I'll go try it. So, yeah, it's important. Yeah.
Hey, so I want to I'd like to like go back to some of the stuff, because we went through a lot there. I mean, of the timeline of Marine Corps to contracting to what you do now. But especially with this audience, I think they love to hear some of those stories. So what was basic training like? And you know what, I didn't get to really get your take on, you know, when you say that you wanted to join at that time period, you were determined. Were you one of these kids who grew up and said, I want to be a Marine, or was it a year or two before that?
No way, shape, or form did I ever think I was going to the military growing up. My grandfather died young in his mid-40s from a heart attack. He was a drinker and a smoker, but he was in the military and the side effects of that. But everywhere else, my family, it wasn't much service. My stepfather's dad was a Marine. And I saw, I was still young. I was around 10, I think, when my mom and stepfather got together, and his dad was a part of my life as a grandfather. And he never talked about the Marine Corps, but I would see the pictures. I would hear people talk about him, and I would just notice his demeanor was different, right? And I said, there's something about him the way he carries himself, and it's prideful. So I took a mental note of that, even at a young age. And when I went to high school, you're trying to figure out who you are, what you're going to do. And I'm like, oh, I'm going to get a soccer scholarship, and I'm going to go pole vault and go to the Olympics. And, these were all potential options. And then when you get closer, you're like, all right, I'm not the top 1%. Like, this is not going to be my life or career. And it's weird because you're a child. Like, we say that now, but back then you think you're a full-size adult. Like, your brain's fully developed and all that. And I remember looking in the military, and a lot of us were looking at it. Few dozen, I'd say 2 or 3 dozen people went into the military out of my class, and 80% of them were going into the Army. They were enlisting, and I would see that. And then my friend Chauncey Weaver and myself, we were just a different breed, and there were only 2 of us out of like 20, 30 people that signed up for the Marine Corps. And I remember thinking to myself, like, if I'm going to do something, I'm going to do the hardest one. Like, I want to be the most badass I can be. Like, and there was just this pride that I could see in the Marines, and in my root psychology, I never like to do what anybody else does. Like, if you have a blue car, everybody has blue cars. I'll get a black car. People do certain things, I do the other thing. And I don't know where that comes from, but I think that probably played a part in it too. But I also remember that pridefulness of that. So that's what my decision-making process was, and going forward with that.
So then, as I was saying, what was like boot camp like? What was the whole process? Especially people might wonder, because we talk to veterans from different eras. So some guys' experiences, and we've had a lot of Marines on, during the war in Afghanistan, war in Iraq, may be different than going in during what was considered peacetime.
Yeah, and the Marine Corps operates a little differently than the other services, for sure. Like, after I got out of the boot camp and stuff and communicated with my other veterans that were in the Army, my friends, like, they acted like they went to a summer camp and it was all fun and they learned and did all this stuff. I felt like I just got out of a nightmare. I literally drove off Parris Island on that day, and I was with my family, and I was trying not to cry. And I'm like, I literally thought the last 13 weeks was a physical something I made up in my head. Like it was just weird. And I'm like, I didn't know what it was. I was like, was that real? So, and that knowing now working with trauma, like you're under a high stress trauma and you're traumatized to a layer, but it's to, they do.
Did you feel a sense of accomplishment as well, or was it all just?
Oh, it's mixed emotions. Like I was like the parade when you this is another thing with the Marine Corps, very traditional. And when you get handed that Eagle Globe and Anchor, that symbolizes you are now a Marine, but you are a recruit. So, you know, they're well, the 13 weeks are there, 12 of it, you are treated like dirt, right? Like you're nothing. You have to earn the title. You're not like in the Army, you go in, you know, you're going to graduate, like you're getting your stuff. In the Marine Corps, they're recruit, and you refer to yourself like this recruit requests permission to go to the head sir. Like you had to say this recruit. And the day, so they have this thing called the Crucible, which was newer back then, which was 72 hours, I believe, and like 50 miles, no food. You're just sleep deprived. Every few miles you have to stop and do these exercises as groups and use your brain. And it's a very strenuous process. And it's the Marine Corps uses it now as one of their main components of making a Marine. And it was rough. Like there were several suicides in my platoon over the 13 weeks, and that was normal. Like the one guy, you know, we heard a muffled gunshot on the rifle range, and they're put your face in the dirt for like an hour, and they had to come. This guy put a gun in his mouth on the rifle range, and they drug him off. We were all literally face down in the dirt, and then business as normal after lunch, like back to shooting range. And you know, I was still part of the old school Marine Corps. You know, we had our camouflage wasn't digital. It was still, I was going too slow because people in front of me were going slow when we had told to go outside. And I got picked up and thrown off a second story building into a sand pit by a drill instructor. Wow. Like literally. And I was hit and punched here and there. Like that was the old Marine Corps. And shortly after, I talked to some of the guys because I did some recruiting duty like a couple months after boot camp because I was waiting for my school to start. And I remember communicating with these guys. They got this stress card because the suicides were going up. So this card, if you pull it out at any time, the drill instructor has to stop and let you be first. And you go and talk to the senior drill instructor. So that's when the Marine Corps started changing, right? And for good or bad, like it makes you a little bit softer, not be able to handle things, but it also prevent suicide, right? Like it's a real problem. Like how do you push somebody to their breaking point and train them to be the best they can be in this trained killer? But also if somebody's weak-minded or not strong enough, how do you get them not to kill themselves? Like they're still a good Marine.
I'm sorry. I'm just curious though, if this is boot camp, right? At that point, why do these guys take their own lives rather than just say, because at that point, can't they say, this is not for me, get discharged? And
no, it doesn't work that way. So that is exactly why. I remember there was a point where I'm like, I don't want to be here anymore. And I don't give up, right? And I'm like, I remember laying in bed and I'm like, okay, if I break both my legs, I'll get a medical discharge. Or if I do this, I remember having these thoughts, right? But then this guy, the next day, this guy comes in and he had broken his arm and leg falling off something. And they just took him and they put him in the PCP, we call it the pork chop platoon, but it was the rehabilitation platoon. And you stay there until you heal and then come back. So he was there for 6 weeks on top of, this is probably week 10 or 9 or 10. So he's in Parris Island for 16 weeks and then comes back. And now he's with a whole new group of people. So he not only lost his original platoon, but he thought he was going to get out. And he didn't. And he told me, like, he broke it. He jumped on purpose. And I was like, well, shit, that ain't going to work. And then you're like, the only way out of here is to, like, kill yourself, because the guys that we would see, like, cry wolf and say, I'm going to kill myself, or they would be vocal and be like, you need to let me out of here. I don't want to be here. They would disappear for a day or two, which they were going to the psychologist. And those psychologists have seen and heard everything, right? They know if you're going to actually kill yourself or not. They know, because the guys who killed themselves, you didn't know. They weren't giving off any signs. It wasn't like that. They were just stoic, right? You didn't know what they were doing. Everybody was like that. But the guys that would cry wolf, they'd go to psychologists. Psychologists would like, suck it up and go back. Like, you ain't going to kill yourself. You're not getting out of here. Go back and suck it up. Right. And that fucks with your head a little bit. Like, you're like, there's no way out of here. It is not like the Army or the Navy, the Air Force. Well, you could, if you wanted to leave, you could leave. Right. You really feel trapped. And that's why there was suicides. Right. And that became a problem in the Marine Corps. And that's why these stress cards and things, after I got out of boot camp, it changed a little bit, but it was still pretty hardcore. And whether it was wartime or not, it doesn't matter in the Marine Corps. You're trained as if, that's our whole ethos is that we're trained for this. Like, that's our job. We're first in, first out. Like, you guys better be ready before anybody else. So does that make sense? Like, a little bit of a...
Yeah, it's weird because in all my years of interviewing guys, I think it's because I'm so used to interviewing special operations guys from Army Rangers and Navy SEALs, and so many of the stories are about you could quit at any time, and this is the complete opposite of that. And it makes me wonder, like, do you think that's a good formula? Because I think the Navy SEALs and the Army Rangers, they get the best of the best because they say you could leave at any time. And most of the guys who end up leaving from the experiences of people I've interviewed are not even during the most strenuous times. It's the mind games.
The Marine Corps, it's still like big Army, big Marine Corps. Like, they have a quota in numbers. They have to keep a certain number of people active duty, keep them coming in, right? So there's a political game behind it too, where how hard do we make it and push them? But the pride of the Marine Corps and tradition trumps everything, right? Like, Marines aren't special forces, but Marines are pretty badass. And if you come out of Marine Corps boot camp, if I put you in Army Ranger school, and no disrespect to any special forces, like, it's going to be fine. Like, Navy SEALs, like, that's a different ballgame. Like, what a lot of Marines, you could throw them into SEALs training and they would do better than somebody that just went through Navy and chose that, right? And
I already know you're going to piss off some Navy SEAls and Army Rangers.
Right. I don't mind. The squids and the guys in the boys department of the military or the Army, whatever you guys call it, they'll be fine. No, I'm just I'm not a special forces, but I'm a Marine, and Marines are Marines, and every special forces are badass, right? Like, there's no question. But that option to quit, like, that is a psychological thing where if you don't want to be there, you don't want them there. The Marine Corps, it's not like that. It's you signed up, you're going to be a Marine, or the only way out is suicide. Like, that was the old Marine Corps, and it's a little different now. I don't know if people have the choice, but in the special forces, like, you're choosing to do that, and they do allow that way out that's the way it is. Like, if you're not all 100% in, then you shouldn't be in there, because in those small operating groups, like, you have to be a unit and you have to be cohesive, and you all have to have that level of competency and wanting to be there. Otherwise, it doesn't work and people die. In a large scale, like in the whole Marine Corps, it does operate that way, but there's a lot more people in the pool. But that's why I feel you're kind of just forced. But they also have quotas, and the smaller operators and special forces, like, that's a different thing. You don't want people that don't want to be there, and that's why they're given the option, I believe. So
it must have been a weird mind fuck for you that a few weeks after this, as you said, you're then recruiting people after you had thoughts of taking your own life that early on because you couldn't take this. So it was about a month or so. I was home in my hometown, right? And here I am. I come back and I look different. I talk different. I have this pride and a little bit of arrogance, right? Like, you're trained to be like you're better than that. That's just how the military is, right? But I was also real with these guys and girls. I would go and talk, and I put a few people in the Army and a few people in the Air Force, and I only put 2 people in the Marine Corps. Like, and when I say put, I mean, I sat down with them as a recruiter in that duty I had, and I talked to them, and I'm like, I don't think the Marine Corps is for you. Like, in the back of my head, I'm like, this dude he'll kill himself within a couple of weeks. He can't handle this. Like, I'm like, hey man, go get your education going to the Air Force. Like, you're smart, like, you want to go in the military, but what is your reason for wanting to go in? Like, to be a Marine, you really need to
want to be there. It's not. It's a different ball game then, and it's like I said, we're all the military is amazing. We all do good things, but of course, I have to just talk about how the Marine Corps is different in a lot of ways, and that's and good and bad. It's just different, and it's not for everybody. And I felt a subconscious, like if I put these people in, if they kill themselves, can you imagine how I'd feel? Like,
Sure.
and that was all fresh. So answering your question, yeah, I didn't force people in and say, which that was a real thing in my thoughts in my head. I'm like, this wasn't easy. Like it was hard. So.
So would you say it was during your time as a contractor where you really fell into this dark place where things got to the point where you didn't want to be here and were really considering this?
Yeah, and I never thought I'd be there, right? Like I remember in boot camp, I remember saying it would be easier to not be here, right? But I wasn't gonna do it. I'm like, I just felt stuck, right? And those thoughts, I'm like, oh, let me break my legs or something. Like it was just in that. I remember that time. Like I don't forget those thoughts. Like I don't think I would actually went through with it. I wasn't vocalizing it. I was just thinking at nighttime. I was just depressed and stressed and all those things. And when it happened years later, it was real. Like I'm like I was coming back. I didn't like the person I was. I was mean to everybody around me. My girlfriends, I was snapping at them. Like I wasn't as patient. Like, and I'm a good person. Like I was raised well. I have good morals. Like I'm a nice guy, and I wasn't being that, and I didn't have control over it. And I was like, and I would get input from people that were close to me confirming that, and I'm like, I don't know if I can fix this, but I still kept going back because I felt obligated to the mission. Like there wasn't people that had the security clearance, the weapons qualifications, the IT type brain I had. Like it was a small group of people that could do what I did, and I felt obligated to keep doing it. And the machine will keep sending you back until you break. Like they don't care about you as a person. It's a contract, and people were making companies that were billing me at an exponential amount of money every time I was in the Middle East, right? Like that was some war profiteering going on, but it was also an opportunity for us, like as veterans, or to go in and have these jobs that most people didn't have access to. So I felt this obligation, and it all piled up, and I was having a tough time, and I had some injuries, and I'm like, if I can't do this anymore, like something's got to give. And that's where the desperation comes in, and the yoga, like something in your subconscious is like, all right, let me just try this, right? I don't care. I'm desperate. Like if I don't do this, I might kill myself. It's like my friend Tom Voss, he walked across, from Midwest across to LA on his own journey, and his story. I'll send you a link to his book and his.
Yeah, we had a guest on, Jonathan Hancock, also a Marine, did a similar type of journey.
Yeah, this guy Tom Voss he's one of my friends. He's a Vatoga teacher, but he has a documentary called Almost Sunrise, and it's about his journey and him and his battle buddy that walked across. But he's like, he was at his wit's end. He's like, if I don't do something, something's gonna give, or I'm gonna take my own life. And his outlet was to just get up and walk, right? Walk these thousands of miles or hundreds of miles and just go, right? And me, I went to a yoga class, and it happened to give me a taste of what could be. And it was like a drug. Like I did it every day because I was getting a hit of the endorphins that were helping my nervous system come down, because my nervous system was a wreck. Like I was doing 2 to 3 months at a time in a war zone, not sleeping, working, 90, 100-hour weeks, wearing Kevlar 20 hours a day. Like even just being a contractor, I wasn't an operator or special operations. Like I was out there doing day-to-day things as a communications, but of course I'd get in the middle of attacks and rocket attacks and firefights and things. But I did that dozens and dozens of times and tried to normalize it. Like, hey, I'm just a civilian now. Like this isn't my job. Like I'm here to do this, and this. But I'd come home and try to pretend like nothing happened and not be in active duty. I'm like, I'm a civilian. I go get drunk, I can go hang out, I can do whatever I want, and I don't answer to anybody. And I had to keep that inside. Like I couldn't just, you couldn't let it out. So it piled up and just brought me to that place where I was at.
Was it just the accumulation, or was there any particular incident? Because from what you were saying earlier in the interview, it seems like it wasn't just like the physical and mental stress. It was also things that you morally were not sitting well with.
And I really wrap my head around, and I journal and talk about these things, like, because one traumatic event could set somebody off and they have PTSD, right? I never wanted to admit I had anything going on, but I definitely had symptoms of PTSD, but I was also able to compartmentalize and function without it affecting me. And I would see people die. I would be in these situations that were not so pleasant, right? That somebody else might be fucked up for the rest of their life. And I did that. I saw dozens of those things over 10 years. And I was also wondering, why am I still able to function, right? And when I started studying the yoga, the science, the psychology of PTSD and post-traumatic growth and these things in the brain and what happens, I was understanding myself. And I was also internalizing and feeling like I could counteract this. Like, I don't have to let this take hold of me. And I try to look back, and I'm like, there were some bad events that happened, but they weren't like, they didn't push me over the edge. It was me sitting with my thoughts, like, why am I doing this? Like, why do I keep going back? Why am I being an asshole to my girlfriend? Like, why do I tell my mom I don't want to come home for Christmas, like, and be with my family? I don't want them to see me like this. Like, that's not me. Like, and I didn't feel like me, and I didn't want to be there anymore. Like, I didn't, and I was like, I'm going to keep doing this and I can't stop. Like, what's wrong? And so it wasn't, to answer your question, it wasn't like this one thing. It was really a culmination of me, these things stacking up and me not feeling a way out, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. What do you think it was about yoga that right away was like, this is the thing? Because it sounds like you experimented with other things and they didn't help, but this was what just resonated with you.
Yeah. And knowing, not then I didn't know, but knowing what I know now, like, I did this physical yoga class, right? And the room was packed. Every mat was next to each other. There's 50 people in this room. It was a level 2, like, very advanced class. My roommate kind of set me up, and she's like, you're coming. And she's like, worst case.
And also probably figured you're a Marine, you could take it,
She also wanted to prove, because I was talking trash, like, oh, this, whatever. And she's like, all right, dude, let's go. And she's like, worst case, you're in a room full of sweaty women, you'll be fine. I'm like, all right.
Yeah, exactly.
And I was sweating from it heated up, and this guy was teaching. This guy was
hot? Was it like the hot yoga?
No, it wasn't the hot yoga, but it was, when you have that many people in one room, it's going to get hot and sweaty. And it was a 2-hour long class, and I didn't want to quit. Like, you know me, I'm like, I didn't have the flexibility, but I just did what I could. And I pushed my limits, and I had a puddle of sweat. And the last pose you do in a yoga class is called corpse pose, Shavasana. And you lie down, and it's a guided relaxation. Like, close your eyes, focus on your breath, relax these parts of your body. And when that
I've done some yoga, so yeah, I'm familiar with that.
When that was going on, I was feeling something I hadn't felt in years, and that was the parasympathetic nervous system, right? Your sympathetic is your fight or flight. So I was physically in my fight or flight mode, and every person in that room was not in fight or flight. Their normal baseline is here. I was operating here, even on my non-war zone time. It didn't matter. I lived in this space. And all of a sudden I dropped below that stress, and there's different hormones that are released, and I was tasting it. And in the science of yoga, they call it like this amrita, this sweetness. It's like the bliss, right? You get a taste of this bliss, and that's euphoria. You hear people describe their experiences. Like, I had this spiritual awakening, or I had this euphoria. Like, it was a micro dose of a euphoria of a spiritual awakening, right? Like I just tasted like a hit, and I was like, if this is what it feels like every time I do yoga, then I need to try it again, because that felt good, and I haven't felt this in years. And I would, and I was in a bad place, and I'm like, this is I got to try this. So that's about yoga. It is that parasympathetic nervous system. So meditation, breathing, exercise, nature, animals, like they all engage that parasympathetic nervous system, and they cause you to go into rest or relax and to calm your vibration, right? And that is what the part of yoga that got me. It wasn't the physical part of it. It wasn't the girls. It wasn't like all those things. Like I was desperate, and I also felt, this is a quick segue, but I came out of this class and everyone was like hanging out and talking, and I was very introverted and suicidal, inside, right? And I had lost my core military friend. Like I wasn't active duty anymore. I didn't have that brotherhood or sisterhood anymore. I was kind of lost in that way too as a civilian. And I had this group of people that were like just all lovey-dovey and no expectations, and were just so nice. And I'm like, this is like a nice little community. Like I get down with this shit. Like I don't care what yoga is. Like these people, it feels good to be around people that are nice and positive. And there was that community aspect that kind of double hooked me that same night. And that was it. I would go to class and I would hang out with people after. I was making a new group of friends that there's no way I would have talked to anybody that was a yoga person. I was like, oh, that's foo-foo girly stuff, right? And there's like all these people that I never would have talked to in my life. And all of a sudden, instead of going out drinking and going to happy hour and hanging out with my veteran friends and just numbing the pain with alcohol or doing that, I was like, I'm going to go yoga tonight and have some green juice and do this. And I was like, where is this coming from? But it feels good, right? So,
and yet I can tell you have that yin and yang still today, because you right now you're drinking a beer, you're like a tatted up guy, but you also have this other side to you from this yoga experience.
And that I think it's one of my strong suits. I am a manly man, like I am a straight male veteran, right? Like, and no negative connotations around anything other than that. Don't read into it, but
sure.
I also have, for 10 years of my life, I'm actually, I weigh 115 pounds right now. I mean, 215 pounds.
I was like, you do not weigh 115 pounds.
Yeah, like I'm a lot beefier and I have a gut, and I feel like myself right now. But 10 years ago when I was doing yoga, I weighed 160, 170 pounds, and I was 100% in my feminine energy because I needed to heal. Like I looked for that female energy, which we call it, and it doesn't mean actual physical female woman. Like we all have a masculine and feminine side, right? Like
sure.
Yoga and these practices have a feminine energy to them, right? There's masculine type strong energy in some of that too, but the practices that were healing me, the deep relaxation, the breathing, the meditations, that was diving into my feminine energy and understanding what that means. Like to even be okay to say that I'm tapping into my feminine energy. Like I would have never said something like that before yoga or in the military. And then circle back, like the last couple of years, about 2 years ago, I was like, all right, I'm too far down this rabbit hole. Like I weigh 180 pounds. I'm skinny. I'm not happy. I don't feel like a man anymore. Like I was driving a Honda Fit because it was cheap on gas. And I was like, I'm going to go buy a truck. I'm going to start drinking again. Like I'm going to gain some weight. I'm going to, and it was only because I felt whole, and I joined some men's groups. And I was learning about what toxic masculinity was versus healthy masculinity. And I'm like, well, let me get my masculinity back in a healthy way and not be, and this was right after the Me Too movement where men were getting, just left out to dry and saying every man is toxic and masculinity is toxic. And I was really internalizing those terms, masculine and feminine, right? And I'm like, well, let me look at these. And I did these men's groups and I did work and therapy around this. Like I wasn't just trying to be a man, quote man. I was, what's it like to be a healthy man and put myself back together? I had that feminine side. I did the yoga. I healed for 10 years. let me work on some other stuff. And that's where I came out the other end, and where I am now. Like, sometimes I feel fat and out of shape and this and that, but I'm like, I actually feel good. I feel like myself. Like, this is who I am. I'm not faking it. When I was doing yoga, I knew I was going into that feminine side to heal, but I knew it wasn't me. Like, and to go back to that fully balanced Justin, that yin and yang, I needed both, right? So, but I needed to know what that felt like, and I needed to go to that extreme on the other side to come out the other end and have a fully balanced, like me, who I am as a whole.
I could actually relate to what you're saying, because I think it happens to a lot of people where they kind of have to be a little bit more extreme in their approach at times, then get back to who they are. So one thing I could even tell you that's interesting with me is when I went into like a heavy depression about 4 years ago, not at all related to stuff like what you have. I mean, I'm not a veteran, but I was losing sense of who I was, I think, as a person and my own identity. And I felt like I lost touch with God, with a higher purpose, with a creator. And the weird thing is, right, like half my family's Catholic, half my family's Jewish. I was raised Jewish. I was bar mitzvahed, all that stuff. But probably one of my more spiritual or religious friends, went to church every Sunday. And I said, you know what, I'd like to come with you sometime. Mm-hmm. And I did, and it was a great experience. I did not become a born-again Christian or anything like that. Like, I'm still the same person. I don't really identify with any religion. But for a period there, I was actually going to this evangelical church every week, and it was becoming like a bigger part of my life. And now that I'm back to myself, every now and again, it's there if I want to go. Mm-hmm. It's not something that needs to be like a regimented part of my life. I don't feel like I need to identify with this religion or this set of circumstances. But I think in times of trauma, you do kind of connect with something that heals you, and you go all in. And then once you kind of feel back to yourself, or even when I went to therapy, I went to therapy for a period of time and was doing it every week, and then every 2 weeks. Then the therapist actually said to me, hey, between like your working out and your journaling and these other outlets that you have, I think you're fine. I'm here if you need to reach me, but I don't think you need to be here every other week unless you feel like you'd like to. And I really appreciated him saying that. So I think sometimes, you do need to go all in to heal yourself, and then you could get back to you, back to the balanced you.
Yeah, and I use my tattoos as an example. Like, so 90% of my tattoos are like Hinduism, right? And I was just full in on this yoga, and I was identifying with some of these warrior characters. Like, this is Shiva, and then this guy is called Hanuman, this monkey god, right? And I was getting all these Hindu tattoos. This is Ganesh, and this is Kali over here. These are all Hindu tattoos, right? And I was teaching theology, yoga, philosophy on religion. And I grew up Catholic, and I never felt God once when I went to church. I remember sitting in church, and I'm like, why the fuck are we here? Like, I don't feel anything. And, in the military, I carried my Bible around. I would get these motivational quotes from the Bible that would, help psychologically, but I wasn't feeling it inside. And I did my first yoga retreat when I was 28 years old, and I went to Bali. And my friend Alana Kavalia and Dave Stringer, they were doing this yoga retreat, and I didn't know what type of yoga it was, and what was going on. I just knew it was in Bali, and I needed a break. And that was at the time where I was suicidal too. I'm like, I did my first, 28 years old, I took my first vacation in my life. I had my first massage. But I go into this class, and they start playing this harmonium, this instrument, and chanting in Sanskrit. And I'm sitting there, my eyes closed, and I start crying, and I could feel like ripping my heart open. And I'm like, I felt God, or that connection right then and there. That was another piece of the yoga. I was like, what just happened? Because I would have never tried chanting or doing this, right? And I dove in, and I'm very intellectual with my engineering brain. So I read all the scriptures. I saw where this type of vibration in Sanskrit, the language, comes from. And it's a vibration that is meant to just tune you to the universe, or what you consider God, or, that's the whole point of yoga, is you calm your mind and your body, and you connect within, and your true self, your soul, whatever that is. And I tasted it there, and I was like, I connect with this. So I started studying Hinduism, and the deities, these pictures, these people, it's more about their characteristics and their story that I was connecting with. These warriors that were in war in some of these stories, but contemplating why am I here on Earth? Why am I fighting my brothers and sisters on Earth? Like I was connecting with those stories, and I tattooed them on my body, and that was in that phase of my the healing feminine side. But when I came out, I was contemplating my filling in the rest of my right forearm, and I'm like, I miss I want some Darth Maul. I want some Star Wars in there. So
Nice.
and my
You know what's crazy? My friend Jay Panesso from the group Siler, who we've had on the podcast,
Yeah.
he has a Darth Maul tattoo, and he got to show it to the guy who played Darth Maul.
That's awesome. And I was dating this girl at the time for a couple of years. She was a CrossFitter, not a yogi, really fitness heavy, and
so she was in her masculine side.
She was,
and
and she's like, I need you to step up and be a man. And I was still like depressed. I was still in that feminine, right? And that, that messed me a little bit too, where I'm like, all right, I know I'm a man. I'm comfortable who I am. And the relationship was toxic. So I ended the relationship. And shortly after, like I was going doing my men's work, and I felt whole again. I was like, I feel like myself, but like, I want something on my arm too. And I got this Darth Maul, and I went and saw her about a year later, and she's like, what's that? And I was like, it's Darth Maul. She's like, you only have like Hindu tattoos. What's going on? I'm like, I'm at a different phase of my life. Like I was coming out of that tail end of that feminine healing journey, and I needed it. Otherwise I would have committed suicide. Like I said, and now I felt whole and healed for the first time. And I'm like, I love Star Wars, and I want that tattoo, and I got it. And now I have, this is all Star Wars theme sleeve, and then I'm going to fill the rest over here with something else. So it's a physical manifestation of what my journey was like over the last decade or so, right?
Yeah, and you can't limit yourself to like one ideology or one aspect of your life. It's this huge thing, It's not just being a veteran. It could be being into movies or being into spirituality.
I'm listening to you. I'm looking for a book while I'm listening to you.
Oh, it's all good. I was actually going to ask you with it because we're about they're the Dharma of Star Wars. I've never seen that. Okay,
this is a yoga book for Star Wars. By the way, anyway,
that's so cool. With us going actually about an hour, do you have more time? I know we originally said an hour. So
yeah, I have a few more minutes, maybe like 10 minutes.
Okay, cool. So you know what I was going to ask you then? Well, there's two. All right, there's definitely two things I have to get the answer from with you. So when I met you, you had your service dog, and I believe you said you used your service dog to train people in yoga, correct?
Mm-hmm. Correct.
What's the connection there? Because it's funny when my mom met you and we were talking to my uncle, he's like, they use a dog to teach yoga, and I'm like, yeah, I have no idea. I'll ask him when I have him on the podcast.
So this is Bria that you met.
There she is.
And her mother's name was Ginger. So Ginger died last year, but Ginger was my therapy dog. So I got Ginger in 2009 when I was in a dark place. She was my puppy, and even when I didn't want to go out in society or be around people, I had her, right? And she, in a lot of ways, saved my life too. Like dogs are naturally, they love you unconditionally. They're always there. Like there's that part. But her mom was intuitive. Like I would have some nightmares or terrors and cold sweats, right? Having flashbacks in the middle of the night. And I would wake up to Ginger like licking my face, or she'd be putting her head on my chest. And she did that all naturally. And I was like, and I studied some of that, and I was like, well, she's doing what dogs do naturally, but there's a type of dog, a therapy dog, that does this. So I started rewarding her mom with when she would do those things. And that was starting her training. And when I had Bria's litter, there was 8 puppies, and I held her, and I could tell her energy was different. Like she's as sweet as they come. Like her mom was a sweetheart, but Bria's like double sweet. And she naturally, as working with Ginger, she would pick up on the things I was teaching, and she was more intuitive to if somebody was under stress. So what they do when you're under stress in fight or flight, you produce cortisol. If you're having a flashback or a night terror, like you have high levels of cortisol. Like dogs smell that and they go there, right? And you reward them when they have that reaction and go help. And when I do teacher trainings with the veterans, she she sits up there calmly next to me when I teach. Like, I have pictures of her, and we do yoga and meditation, like the corpse pose, Shavasana. When you go into Shavasana, your conscious brain starts to turn off. You go down in the theta and delta brainwave where you are in the subconscious. Your active mind, your active cognitive conscious brain is turned off. And sometimes when you're down there, that's where a lot of these traumas are stored. So you are giving them a chance to resolve and actually come out and leave and resolve that trauma in that process. That's why this type of yoga is so potent when you do this deep relaxation. But in that process, it comes out with the story, like how it was created there, because it's stored there and repressed for a reason, so you can survive and not deal with that horrifying moment. But when it comes out in that space, it's unraveling like a ball of yarn. And the dog will smell that. Like, Bria will smell that. And you'll see when people in Shavasana and the teacher training, she just quietly goes over and she'll just put her head on their chest. Or she'll nudge them or lick their palm, right? That's the magic of what she does as a therapy dog. So it is to help people in their process to have a safe environment and to allow these traumas to come out and to leave for good. Because if you're not in a quiet, safe environment, you're going to wake up in a cold sweat and you're going to repress it again, right? But if you have an aid of a dog there to help coax you and calm you down until your nervous system calms down, and then you go back into relaxation instead of shutting it off. And if you prolong that data or delta theta brainwave state, you can resolve these traumas. They actually will heal and leave you, right? And you no longer are attached to the physical reaction of a nightmare or a night sweat or terror. And you have resolved that trauma and you have healed that trauma. And the dog has helped with that. So does that make sense?
Absolutely. I love dogs, and I think dogs are so healing just in general. In general, petting a dog, seeing a dog, speaking with a dog, even though they can't speak, but they can communicate with you. I totally understand as a dog lover. The last question I have for you then is, yoga has helped you so much, and I think there's all different types of unconventional ways that veterans are healing rather than going the route of, and this isn't all the VA does, I don't want to put it in a bad light, but the route of many guys going to the VA, getting hooked on pills, and in some cases killing themselves with these pills. I like our sponsor Ned, for example, right? CBD is really helping guys. And then there's more controversial ways that veterans are tapping into this, but saying it works for me. And we've had guys in the podcast who are into psilocybin mushrooms and that type of thing. What is your take on it? Because my take, I could just say as a non-veteran, if it helps, I'm happy with it. If it doesn't bring them down the road of addiction, even if these are drugs that I've never experimented with, I'm happy with it.
Yeah, and I'll talk to 2 points. You should I'll introduce you to my buddy Tom Voss, the one I talked about earlier. He does plant-based medicine, work with veterans and things too, and he'll talk to you. But in my experience, right, like in the beginning, before weed was legal and those things, you had to get a medical card, and a couple friends of mine were veterans that were opioid addicted, right? And later, some of those guys committed suicide. They were just numbing the pain with alcohol and drugs, right, and pain pills. And the VA and the veterans medical will just keep enabling that. Though we went in, my buddy, I had to take him in to drive him because his leg, he had shrapnel and stuff, he couldn't drive. And we went in to get his prescription for oxycodone, and there was 100 pills in the bottle. I remember when I had surgery, they gave me 10 pills, and they were like very stingy about that. Like, they just gave him 100 pills, and he just got 100 pills the month before and lost them. And he just went back. They didn't ask about him losing pills. They didn't ask, when's the last time you got pills? They gave him the amount of the bottle. You can fill it with 100 pills. They filled it with 100 pills and just gave it to him. And that right there, I was like, something's wrong, right? Like, somebody needs to be monitoring this. And he was addicted. We went into methadone and then heroin because of that pathway. And that's where a lot of these narcotics go, the opioids. And then I saw my other friend, he was highly addicted. And he was like, you know what? I smoke my joint in the morning and I take my gummies in the afternoon, and I don't feel like I have to take my pain pills anymore. And I met another guy and the same thing. Like, they had their formula that worked for them. And I wasn't allowed to do these things, and I was in pain at the time. I had some injuries, and I'm like, I was actually upset that I couldn't do this because I have my security clearance and things like that, right? So, but I would, I became an advocate for my friends and anybody I met. I'm like, hey, maybe you should try some CBD or some gummies or this. And I was taking CBD for my inflammation, and it was helping tremendously. But I knew, like, some of the other pain, it's that next level, the THC, and then some of that other stuff I couldn't tap into. And then talking to my friends doing psilocybin or ayahuasca and doing these other types of plant-based psychedelics, and they're them kind of being where I was when I was suicidal, and them doing these spiritual plant-based medicine and coming out the other end, and they detach from their physical body. They mentally they tell the story like, I saw what was messed up and now I see it and I know I got to fix it, and this helped me get there. And these microdosing, the psilocybin, helps keep me calm. And I smoke a joint, or I take this gummy, and I eat this chocolate. And each one of them has their own prescription for themselves. And it's not this addiction like the opioids, right? It's like, this works, and eventually, I won't be doing a lot of this. And if I have to smoke a joint every day, then so be it. So yeah, I'm glad you brought it up, just to lift the veil on that, because it used to be negative before, and now it should be openly used and tried by everybody that has a chance, especially if you're out there suffering in physical pain or emotional pain or suicidal. Like, use all the tools, talk to your network. Like, that's what the power of these things are, with what you're doing and letting people talk and share their voice. Like, somebody out there listening today, they're going to connect with where I was, and I'm me describing that dark place, and then hearing, well, maybe I'll try yoga, or maybe I'll just go smoke a joint, like, because it's not as bad as people say it is, according to listening to my friends keep telling me, like, try this, try that. So,
and we also know you're not going to die from it. You're not going to kill yourself from marijuana.
Exactly. So, good job bringing that up. So,
it's just true. I mean, it's what we're seeing, and it is the prescription drugs that are killing people, sometimes more than the street drugs. Obviously, there's the street drugs like heroin, and that's not what we're talking about. But the drugs that you can go on retreats for, with people you've had on the show, like Truth Seeker, or Leo Jenkins, who's an Army Rangers, talked about this type of thing on his episode. It's all important. I think whatever people could find. Someone might do a yoga class with you guys, and they might say, this isn't for me. So I'm glad to find whatever it is for that person that gets them out of that dark space. The last thing, I know I said the last thing before, but if people want to take a class with you, how could they go about it? If people want to get involved, where should they go?
Yeah. So right now I'm not teaching like weekly classes like I used to as a yoga instructor, but what we do is we create workshops and teacher trainings for veterans and military and other civilians that live in the community around veterans. So we post those on the website in vetoga.org, VETOGA, and everything we're doing. We do the trainings twice a year, one in the fall, one in the spring, over Memorial Day, and then over Veterans Day. And we're also doing a yoga retreat in January for our Vetoga teachers. So we're going to start doing more yoga retreats in California. We have a retreat space out here that we partner with my business partner at Otis Retreat Center. And so people can look on the website. We're going to start posting those opportunities. And as a nonprofit, we make all these experiences free for veterans and military. So every dollar we raise goes to that mission, and paying for their flights, their lodging, their food, and the experience of taking these classes or these trainings. So yeah, we just had Giving Tuesday yesterday, which was a big day for a lot of nonprofits. So we did some fundraisers. So those funds are going to go to this. We have a retreat coming up in January. So the money we raised yesterday is paying for people's travel to come out and do a yoga retreat. So we'll post those opportunities on the website that people can look for.
That's excellent. So once again, vetoga.org, VetogaDC on Instagram. Also your personal Instagram at JBlazeYoga. yeah, check them out, guys. And if you're looking to get involved in yoga or you're looking to donate, definitely a great cause. This has been an awesome interview. And, I'll throw a shameless plug in here. If you're interested in CBD, definitely check out Ned, helloned.com/battleline, because a lot of vets, we've actually had Marines who have tried CBD now because of the show, and they're having like amazing experiences with it. So helloned.com/battleline. And you'll get a discount from us depending on what you spend. You could also get their new blend. Anything else before we wrap this up? I'm really I got to thank my mom for sparking up a conversation with you at the airport, because that's how this happened, to be honest.
Yeah, tell your mom thank you, and your mom's a sweetheart. I could tell coming over to me. Yeah, but my mom is a great person too, and we're both mama's boys. I can tell, and we're here because of them. And yeah, and just keep doing what you're doing. And if you ever want to bring me back on, I'm going to throw some other names at you, people I think you'd have a good conversation with. And it was great to connect, and I'm looking forward to our relationship moving forward and how we can help each other and support our community out there. So,
absolutely, I'll have this up on Monday. And as always, guys, I'll leave us a review on Apple Podcasts. And thank you again.
That's all for this episode of the Battleline Podcast, but we'll be back on Monday with more American Straight Talk. Until then, be sure to follow us on Instagram at Battleline Podcast and on Twitter at Battleline Pod. To sign up for future Battleline tactical courses, go to www.christantoparanto.net. Believe in yourself, face all challenges head on, and as always, never quit.